Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are tuning in from, or if you are catching us on replay. This is The Awesome Journey, and I am your host, Kelly Steinicke, along with my co-host in care, Christy Howard. And y'all, this is such a special day. This is episode 52. I cannot believe it. Time flies when you're having fun. And we're so thrilled to have celebrating with us today our brothers from other mothers, the guys from Gold Shields, who they just celebrated their 1-year anniversary in January. And we're just so thrilled to have you back to celebrate it with us, Mr. Tom Smith and Mr. Dan Murphy. Again, just such a privilege to have you guys. We adore you. Anyone who missed the first episode, we will share that link in the comments as well as in the post promos and all the links that we talk about during the show today, because there will be a lot of things that we're going to be talking about. So stay tuned for that. And before we get over to them, because I definitely want to do a little bit of a highlight on this last year. You know, a year ago, to think Christy and I slapped a date on the calendar, literally, and said, this is the day we're starting. And we went with it. And I'm telling you, not only did we come out of the gate strong, it was kind of like, oh, how are we going to maintain? Our first guests were Mark Toscano and Brandy, and her last name is escaping me. I apologize, but it was a recruiter job seeker situation. And then episode 2 was Mr. Bob Hamer, one of Christy's dear friends, who was so kind to come on our second show with us, having no experience whatsoever, doing our own show. And after having Bob on, who was an undercover FBI agent and infiltrated NAMPLA, we kind of thought, well, there's the bar. How are we going to maintain? And I'll tell you what, not only has it maintained, it has so far exceeded, I think, what we could have ever expected. And I will say I'm a better human being for being able to talk to all of these people, hear their stories, share their stories, and learn from them. And so many of them have become our friends and an extension of our family, which is even more incredible. And really, to cut back even to the more basic portion of it, is the awesome journey. For those of you that are new, like, what the heck is the awesome journey? The awesome journey is this little thing called life. It's not always good. It's not always bad. You know, sometimes it's amazing and sometimes it's downright awful. But it's a journey that we're all on together. You know, we're all headed to a destination together. And while we're here, you know, we can make it quite awesome when we do it together. And that's what this show has proven, to share stories, to help others who may be struggling in silence with mental health, because that has been at the center. So much of all of what we do is about helping each other, sharing love, sharing our faith, and again, other people's awesome journeys. And I think that is enough said for right now, because I want to get to our guests. Because we're going to have a blast today. So sit back, relax, get your coffee, tea, adult beverage if you choose, and let's get started. And before we hand it over to Tom and Dan, I will turn it over to my co-host in care, Christy Howard.
I always like turning 1. It makes me feel young. That's 2 anymore. I'm 1. So Tom and Dan, appreciate you coming back. You know, I dig your podcast, especially when I'm doing somebody's website or resume, and I am just, because I'm jamming to you. Your podcast, it's either that or listen, so it goes back and forth. So, but
wow.
Now you're
good company, man.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get through it. But no, your podcast, just the people, the truth. And you know that I want to hear about Mar-a-Lago from my old boss's home, because everybody knows, if you don't know, I'm a huge Trump fan, because I actually personally know him. I worked for him. So I appreciate you all. Our first responders are, again, getting attacked, and it breaks my heart. So people need to wake up. So it's all you guys right now. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having us for your 1-year birthday. And Kelly and I got mixed up with the birthday celebration the other day, thinking it was her birthday.
Oh yeah, that was a fun little sidekick.
But you know what? You listen to your stories about, your podcast and your show and how it developed and what happened. And Dan, we're so similar to the way we started. We laugh now. We're in, a year and a half. We just recorded our 67th show last week. And we laughed that we had 7 shows lined up in the beginning of this. And we had no idea what number 8 was going to be. Danny and I talked like, what are we doing next week? We're like, we don't know. Let's get through this week. And then it just, like you said, it just took on this life and took off. And a very similar conversation Dan and I had that you guys had of keeping up with what we were doing. We kept finding ourselves getting these incredible guests with these stories that leave Dan and I speechless a lot in just sitting and being, like overcome with what we're hearing. We'd always be like, what's next? Can we keep this up? And thankfully we have been. It's just been a great ride, and we're thrilled and lucky and humbled by what's going on.
That's awesome. And would you do a little bit of your background, Tom, for those that weren't around for the first episode?
Yeah, I'm a retired NYPD detective. I did 30 years in the NYPD, worked in pretty much a lot of different units: patrol, anti-crime, narcotics, a gang unit where Danny and I met, the robbery squad in the Bronx, and then 9/11 happened and dramatically changed my career. I would have been extremely happy being a homicide detective in the Bronx for my career. I mean, that's always growing up what I wanted to do, and that would have been fine with me. And then 9/11 changed everything. And then from that point on till the day I retired, 17 years later, was assigned to the Joint Terrorism Task Force along with Dan. We both got picked up at the same time right after 9/11. So a 30-year run was good. 30 years was a nice round number to call it a day. And got out, pretty healthy and together. So I couldn't be happier.
That's awesome. Awesome. And Dan, welcome. We're so happy to have you back. So if you could, Stacey, do a little share for those who weren't around for round 1, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, certainly. As Tom mentioned, he and I worked together in the PD. I did 20 years in the NYPD, and I did everything from narcotics to, uniform, narcotics, felony warrants, organized crime, DEA task force, major case squad. I had a great run as a detective. Love what I did a lot of federal racketeering cases on violent gangs. And then I got promoted to sergeant and went to Hell's Half Acre, the 1.1 square acre precinct, the 46th precinct in the Bronx, which was great for me. I learned so much, such a busy place. Then from there went on to do some time in internal affairs, which is what they do if you're a sergeant and you want to go back to the detective bureau. So I did my time there, which was actually, I had the citywide impersonation and robbery squad, which was interesting. How many drug crews are out there robbing drug dealers dressed up as cops with phony raid jackets and stuff, and people jumping out windows and people wanted for homicides. Crazy, crazy stuff. But went from there to the gang unit where I met Tom, Bronx Gang. And at the time I was a sergeant. I had 13 detectives assigned to the investigative team of the Bronx Gang unit. And we had about 46,000 identified gang members in the Bronx. And the mandate from headquarters was do something about it. Kind of a generic, do something about the gang situation in the Bronx. It was actually slightly more detailed than that, but we took our stab at seeing what we could do about the Latin Kings and the Crips and the Bloods and the Nietas and all these other morons that roam the streets of the Bronx wearing the same color so they act like their family. But we did that for a while, and then I moved on to a unit that I was in on 9/11 called TARU. It's a citywide technical investigations team. And then from there, Tom and I met up again in the Terrorism Task Force after 9/11. I had a great run. I mean, I met amazing people. I had a chance to meet heads of state all the way down to the lowest crackhead in the street. And you learn how to talk to everybody, and you learn how to listen to everybody, and you learn how to deal with them. And so I had a really, really good experience in the NYPD. I left there, I went into corporate security, which is kind of a natural progression for people in policing in many ways. I ended up becoming the chief security officer for U.S. Bancorp, which is a big role out in the Minneapolis area, and traveled the world doing that, and met some great people, learned a lot of great things, and now I do a bunch of different things. I work for my church, which is in public safety, which is great. I love it. I'm building a program here that I think needs to be built. And Tom and I have these two pursuits. We have the podcast, which we love doing because we have met the most amazing people. And that's what it's all about. You know, we look at our little bank account for the podcast. We go, can we afford a new microphone or something? And we, you know, it's like, whatever. It's not about that. You know, it's really been about the experiences and the richness of meeting people that like you two, just incredible. And then we also have a product which we can blather on about later. It's an alternative to pepper spray, and we have to give you guys some samples of it.
Yes.
But yeah, you know, we love the podcast world because it is an opportunity to be free format. We started our show with the intention of being a true crime show. We're going to interview detectives and agents and people who reconnecting. Okay. Was lost. So, and then we found out that there are stories peripheral to that are phenomenal, including about wellness and healing and traumas and military service and what it does for you, and police service and what it does to you. It's been absolutely unbelievable. And we could name them all. It would take us all day, but you know, we love this kind of stuff. We love getting real people, finding out their stories, sharing our stories, because people are infinitely more fascinating than what you see just walking down the street, right? I mean, everybody's got a story, and some of them are amazing.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because I love that you hit on the wellness, and I can see we're having all sorts of tech stuff happening, but we got to keep going with it.
Yeah, I'm trying to play with it on back end.
Okay, thanks, Tom. But with talking with people and their stories, because it's astonishing what happens, and what I truly do love about this is it's like every checkbox that society tries to put on us leaves the building when we're in this space sharing our stories. The compassion that goes out for one another, the empathy, the vulnerability, and the bravery that it takes in some cases to share some of these deep, dark stories, but it is helping someone. I mean, you get that one email, and I remember the first one I got, and of course, I cried. I'm a crier, but it would make anybody cry when it says that it changed the course of their life, that it made them want to get up. That is like mic drop moment. That's exactly why we want to put out any kind of positivity into the world, because it needs more of it, for one. But inspiration, motivation, and hope are things we can't have enough of. And what a way to reach the person that will never interact. They won't comment, but it's reaching them and giving them a message, and I believe when they need to hear it. And so the power of that is beyond. But on the same token, it has such this intimate feel when you're doing it, because people be like, oh, I could never do that. And I'm like, well, you can, because we're having a conversation. It's the exact same thing. But it is the beauty of the connection with people. And then it's like, hey, when we pull the layers of everything, the titles, the whatever, we all need the same things. We just want to be seen, heard, and loved. And go ahead, Christy.
Nope, go ahead. You finish.
No, I am. Go ahead.
That's what's the wonderful thing about social media. A lot of people think it's a negative thing, and they're like, I'm only posting this, blah, blah, blah. But I have found out that when you share your story, and especially since before COVID or going into COVID, LinkedIn completely changed, and people are sharing their stories. People want to stop wearing the masks. And when you stop wearing the masks and pretending that you're something that you think everybody else wants you to be because you can't tell your story, and embrace that story, you're going to connect with other people, because other people are going to say, wow, I am not alone. And you all, with your podcast and the people that you bring in, yes, they do tell the whole story over what, I don't know, the news assumes that we all want to hear, the propaganda and the all crap right there. However, they're sharing everything. They're getting into the politics. They're getting into everything, where we're in a society that they continue to try to dictate what we can say and what we can't say. and try to shut us down. However, these, your podcast, this show, other shows, it's our voice. And until you continue to talk, people are going to start listening, going, okay, they're like me. I'm not normal. I'm normal. Maybe we're not.
Right.
I can relate to that. And I think that's the beauty of you guys having, our first responders and beyond, the heroes in our eyes, that because we can tend to think, well, you're heroes to everyone else, but forget the trauma behind the badge as an example, and what happens. And there's something about hearing a story from someone that we look up to, that shares, that impacts us differently, because it is like, oh my God, I never realized that, or I didn't think that. And hearing it from the people who are boots on the ground doing this stuff. It's not third, fourth, fifth hand hearing a story that I heard somewhere or a post I read. It's the actual people. And that does make a huge, impact. What are
especially since they're hated so much. Everybody hates the cops until they meet them.
Well, right. And you know what, that was, going into the show, that was a big part Danny actually brought up. We were pretty happy with the way we did it, because we took our time developing the show. We really didn't jump into it. We took about almost 2 months of kind of figuring out what we want to do. And I remember this distinctly. Danny came up and said, listen, the one thing we're not going to do is tell someone else's story. We're not going to tell a story that we're not 100% have the knowledge of, and just sit there and just talk. Let's get the people who did them on the show. And that's what we did. And a lot of times we'll do our research on the show and why someone's on for maybe a particular event or a mission or an arrest or whatever. But we tend to not get, and we don't want to, we don't get the entire story. We actually want to hear on the show the first time of some of these things that have happened to them. And you'll notice, if you watch the show, you'll know exactly when that happens by our reaction. Because and just when you think, like Danny and I, for instance, just when we think we did something pretty cool in the PD, and then you hear some of these stories, we're like, all right, we're like this big.
That's right.
We didn't, I thought that was cool, but then you hear, someone like Jason Redmond, who we just had on, who had one of the most devastating injuries you can think of, during, a conflict in Fallujah in Iraq. And then you think about, like, all right, I wrote like 5 summonses yesterday, and that was a tough day. We're blessed, and it just keeps going and going. And the public may hear a part of what we're talking about or have a knowledge of it, but not probably a good 60-75% of the rest of the interview is stuff no one knows about.
Well, and I think what's interesting about both of our shows, I mean, yes, Kelly deep dives and goes into the YouTubes and all that information. I don't have the time.
I hope it.
But anyway, so she's seen it. For me, I talk to them, and that's just, and then I want, it's, let's tell your story, and then I'll go back and go read your book and all that stuff. For the fact that they share things that it's not the same stuff that they would share if they're doing a conference. They're having that conversation where you're just sort of sitting in somebody's living room, just BSing and just saying, hey, this is who I am, whatever. My favorite, well, I have all yours are favorites, but Tig. Yeah, I mean, his is just, on his back porch, just said it, because if those people who have, and you can share the whole thing, but people who have seen that movie and heard what it was supposed to be here, and this is the person that actually was there.
Yeah.
And so you have the people, as we do as well, who have actually, as you said, boots on the ground and have dealt with the darkness, but look where they're at now, and they've learned, they've grown through it,
right,
to become a better person.
It's interesting you say that. We do try to get detectives or military operators or people, or even people in the wellness field who do the work, but every now and then there's somebody who is somewhat tangential to it, wasn't directly involved, but was impacted by it and has a fascinating story. Like, for example, we had a gal named Robin Maharaj, who's an author, and she is a tremendous individual. What a great interview. She had the opportunity to meet. Now, everybody knows the Jeffrey Dahmer story. We all know what he did. He was a cannibal. He was crazy. He killed people. He got killed in prison. The story's been written. But sometimes there's another story, and that story is the detective who was the officer on the scene, the detective on the scene who Jeffrey Dahmer took a liking to, because the rest of them in his mind were just going to beat him up. Took a liking to him. He went back to the police station with him, and he was the only one he said he would talk to. And this detective sat with Jeffrey Dahmer for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week for how many weeks, Tom?
6 or 7 weeks.
Yeah. And just, learned everything there was to know about Jeffrey Dahmer's life, motivations, experience, how he did the murders, why he did the murders. Everything that he had to say and share to the world, he shared with this detective. The detective wrote numerous pages, massive amounts of notes. Well, those notes were sitting around in his house. Robin found out about it as an author and reached out to him and said, would you be interested if I did a book based upon your experiences interviewing this guy, Jeffrey Dahmer? Nobody else did what you did. Nobody else heard what you heard from him. He said, sure. He was very gracious about it. He went and met her for dinner. They talked, had a great discussion, plans to move ahead with how she would frame it out. And she had this all in her mind. And then he passed away. He suddenly passed away. And Robin said, not about making money, but to continue to honor what he did and who he was as a person, very high integrity person. She went to the wife and said, would you mind, do you think he would mind if I did this book? And she said he would love that. So she gave Robin the notes, and Robin put together the book. And her story of what she learned from him while secondhand is still very, very impactful, very interesting. It's the kind of thing, the history books have A, B, and C, but there's a lot of stuff in there that you didn't know. Right, Tom?
Yeah. And we were talking to her and Robin, and Patrick Kennedy was the detective, and it was like talking to him. It was odd. It was she was an unbelievable interview. She was so good that Dan and I just sat back and just listened. But it was like talking to Patrick Kennedy, the detective. That's how good and involved she was with his notes. And that was one of those memorable ones. We've had many, but that one.
You just had Amanda on, the Irish Angel.
Yes.
And what caught me with her is for the fact that she opened. I didn't know. I always knew Ireland had their issues, but she opened my eyes up to how we're becoming this place. Mm-hmm. I'm pivoting to Mar-a-Lago right here. But I really enjoyed hers for the fact that she was just saying what she, there was no reason why she does what she does.
Right.
Yeah.
It was here, do this. I don't know why you should do it. And so, people, I always say, go to your podcast, because there are angels out there.
Oh, amen.
They, you might not see their wings, but their wings are broken, but they're walking amongst us.
Amen.
So I want to congratulate you on your honor in Fort Worth. No cowboy hat and cowboy boots.
This guy,
yeah. But I was very impressed. Again, Fort Worth, dude, cowboy boots. it's cowboy time. So tell us about that, and then I want to hear more Lago.
Okay. Well, that night at the National Law Enforcement Officers Hall of Fame was all because of my partner, and he'll shake his head and all this other crap, but
sometimes
it doesn't.
Let's back up a little bit, because Dan is the one that put in
Yeah.
Recommended you for the award.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Good.
Well, Tom actually, I think he actually filled out and put my name on it. 'Cause he wrote a bunch of stuff.
Don't say that. Don't say
He wrote a bunch
that.
of stuff. I don't even know if it happened, but yeah. No, I submitted for Tom to be considered for induction into the National Law Enforcement Officers Hall of Fame, because when you look at his career, he's done things that are far above the norm, and some of it is simply because we were blessed to be in the NYPD, which is really in many ways a national, if not global, organization. And our touch is very long and far. And if you worked in the terrorism task force like we did, and Tom did many years there, you have a chance to do things that the average cop in America will never, ever conceive of. But it's not just that he had the chance to do them, it's that he excelled at them. And he did things in his career that are so noteworthy that I thought it only right that the Hall know about them and consider him for induction. And they did. They inducted him, and I think it was a great choice. He got a lifetime achievement induction, and it's well deserved. Well deserved. I mean, we have a lot of things we say in the NYPD about detectives, and one of them is, if something happens to a member of my family, I want you on the case because I know you're going to get the guy. I know you're never going to give it up. And that's what Tom is. He's the most determined, dogged, and being his boss wasn't easy because of this at times. Tom, I need you to do this. No, I'm doing something. I'm busy on this. But usually I was busy on it with him. But, a very laser-like focused kind of guy. And he's the kind of guy, literally, that law enforcement has so many of. But I got to highlight what he did, which is that if something happens that's heinous or something is a bad crime or guy's a bad person, watch out. Watch out. And hell hath no fury like a pissed off detective, we always say, right? If you tick us off, we're going to get you, and we're going to get you bad. We're going to make it stick. So that's that's how Tom is, and it's very, very well deserved. I mean, I don't even want to go into all the stuff that he did in his career, but it was well deserved, and it was a great night, and I was very, very happy. Still, I'm happy for him, even though he holds it over my head that he's in the Hall of Fame, and I'm not.
Oh, well, there you created that though, Dan. So
yes, he did. And you know what?
It was totally and ask you a question with that, Tom, because of course I watched it and watched your acceptance speech, which was freaking incredible, and of course I was crying at the end because hearing your wife and you dedicating that to your wife was so incredible and so beautiful. But I want to know, how did you find out that you were going to be the recipient, and what were your thoughts? And
it was funny because what had happened, even going back even further, we had one of our episodes was with Kimber Gist, and Kimber was a deputy sheriff down in South Carolina and got involved in an incident where she got shot 8 times during an investigation of a automobile behind a mall. She ends up getting shot 8 times. Now, at the time, she's 22 years old, brand new on the force, ends up returning fire, trying to chase the car that the perp is in with a completely shattered foot and ankle and a bullet in her stomach, and still tries to run after the car. And then finally just collapses, and the story is goes from there. The bad person ends up killing themselves when the SWAT team's going after them and so forth, which is no loss whatsoever. But the day after we did that episode, Dan and I said we need to nominate Kimber for the Hall of Fame. And I mean, the next day we got in touch with Megan. We're like, how do we do this? How do we get this girl in the Hall of Fame? Because she needs to be. And we started the process. We did the paperwork. We sent it in. So we were waiting for that. So then in January, my phone goes off, and it's Megan, Adam Davenport, and Dan on the FaceTime call. So I'm like, hey guys, what's up? And we've done that before. That wasn't anything like out of the ordinary. So I'm like, hey guys, what's happening? And Megan says, hey, I got some great news. I want to tell you guys that Kimber is getting into the Hall of Fame. So I was so thrilled, that Dan knew, so it was just kind of me. I was thrilled. That was all I wanted to hear, that she got in and she's going to be honored. And Dan and I had planned on being there anyway. you know, because we were going to do a show and the whole thing. And to be there that Kimber was going to be getting in made, you know, was the best news. Then I'm thinking of Kimber, and then all of a sudden I hear Megan say my name. And I went, what did you say? Why are you talking? Why'd you just mention me? And Megan goes, did you just hear anything I just said to you? I'm like, no, what'd you say? And then she said, well, dummy, you're also getting in and getting the Lifetime Achievement Award, and Dan had nominated you. And it took literally 10 or 12 seconds for that to even get in my head. And, you know, I'm not ashamed of it. It was emotional. I didn't know what to say, how to act, you know, because you find, you know, I found myself, my head getting filled with 30 years of stories and images that is now going to be, you know, in one big night. And I literally had to call them back. I was like, listen, I got to go. I'll talk to you guys in a little while. And, you know, it took 10, 15 minutes or whatever. And I couldn't even get all of them on the same call because I couldn't do it. I just called each of them individually to thank them because it meant that much. And not blowing smoke and not, you know, over dramatize it, but it meant even more that Danny did it, you know. And you don't, you know, and the part about it is none of us in law enforcement go into law enforcement to get something like this. You know, it's not a thought. It's not on your checklist. It's, you know, something that's not a thought. So when it does happen, it means that much to it. And everything you would hope happened that night happened. You know, the atmosphere, the people who were there. We had, you know, like I said, actually in my speech, we had 7 or 8 people who were on our show that were at the ceremony, who are now part of our family, which meant the world to me being there, and my wife, you know, and finally meeting them in person made it a great night.
Well, I missed your speech. I heard Kyle's, but I missed your speech. Where do I find that?
I'll send it to you.
Okay, I appreciate it. I actually looked for it.
I can tell you what he said. That, I guess this means you like me. You really, really like me.
A Sally Fields moment. And for all of you that don't know what we're talking about,
that was written on the speech, and I was like, nah.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't say that, but that's funny. I love that. So yeah, so much has happened. So of course that happened, but you guys have been doing a lot, and I think maybe that's where the live started coming up with you, because you guys did a couple of lives from there, and you're going to start incorporating that regularly. So why don't you talk about that a little bit too, and then we can go into the other event that you also recently went to.
Okay. Yeah, you know, we tried out and we found out we really like it, just doing the live Instagram, which ultimately gets posted on all of our platforms. Whenever we have somebody we want to talk to, or even just something we want to comment on or announce, and we have so much fun doing it, and we get to see, just like you guys have now, you get to see some live feedback from people saying, hey, mention this or ask about that. I get a kick out of that, the interactive piece of it. But it's also a chance for us to make the show a little bit about what's going on in the world, or something slightly different than the normal routine show that we do, which we try to be very guest focused on our show. But the Instagrams are a blast. We have a great time doing them. And I think it's just an opportunity we plan on taking advantage of for quite some time. Now, we don't shy away from current things. One of the things Tom and I have always maintained that we see
like
show
that. The one with the border.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that in a second. But
own issues, but it's still good.
It's part of our commitment to the truth. Now, whether it's uncomfortable, whether somebody doesn't want to hear it, we don't care. We won't let a guest come on and spread lies. Right. We won't let a guest come on and throw a theory out. No, it's got to be the truth. We want the truth because our audience wants the truth. And at the end of the day, we can look in the mirror and feel good about, we said this because this is true, not because I think, or, you know, and as detectives, you deal in real facts and evidence. So we are seeing what's happening in our country, all the devastation that's taken place across this country, and so much of it, whether it be the fentanyl overdoses, the crime rates in the big cities, the political issues, all this stuff. the terror watch list folks that are streaming across our southern border and now northern border, if we don't have something to say about that or highlight what's going on for our audience, we're failing them, because we now have a platform. And if we don't use that platform in the right way, what's the point of having it? So to that end, we recently had an opportunity to, we got very, very lucky. Again, the people we've been meeting, right? We got an invitation down to Mar-a-Lago for the Border 9/11 event. Now, Border 911 is an organization run by Tom Homan, and its focus is to help our southern border secure. And it has great people on it, on that board. Victor Avila, who has become a friend of ours, he's just amazing. These are great people who, if our 45th president becomes our 47th president, you'll see their names in that administration, and rightly so.
Good.
They take what's happening at the border seriously and personally. They have plans, ideas, and in-depth knowledge of exactly what it takes to fix this situation, and they're poised to do it. So we were there to be part of that discussion, meet some of the folks involved in it, folks like Vivek Ramaswamy, who was, what a gentleman, nice man to meet, Kash Patel, met Tom Homan. Just an amazing, amazing night to be part of, and to see this groundswell of support for not just Donald Trump, but for some of these folks who are so well versed in what's going on down there. And it was amazing. When was the last time you went to Mar-a-Lago? I mean, I never thought I'd even set foot in it. It was kind of cool, right, Tom? I mean, can't beat that.
That was a good conversation, because I had gotten the email and talked to Kyle about it, and Ken and all that. And I didn't want to call Dan too soon before it was actually a thing. You know, it was being talked about, and then, you know, Kyle was just like, no, you're coming. Basically, you know, figure it out and I'll see you down there. So the call to Dan was fun, because it started off with, bro, sit down. I go, just sit somewhere. And he's like, why? What's the matter? I go, oh, nothing's the matter. And then I told him, and there was kind of a pause. And then, wait, what?
Yeah.
I said, yeah, you know, get on your computer, figure a flight out. Let's, you know, and that was, Dan, we were only a week out of it. It was only about a week beforehand that we got asked, and had to run around pretty quick to get some stuff done. But like Dan said, when you're surrounded by people like that, who are of such the same mindset and patriotism and all that, you know, it's special to be there and be asked to be around these people and get to meet them, and have just say, you know, they're not on TV, they're in front of you having a conversation with you. And it was a special night, memorable, and the people we got to meet and the things we got to hear about, you know, what the future entails was a special night.
Rob O'Neill. I mean, we got to meet Rob O'Neill. I mean, the guy is amazing, and he's so low key, and like, he doesn't think who he is. He's just, hey, nice to meet you.
Most of them are that way.
Yeah.
They're just doing what they're doing. And, you know, from somebody who, you know, worked with Trump, yes, he is who he is. But the one thing I will say, out of everybody I've ever worked for, he's the most generous boss that I ever had. And his heart is there. My question is, did you meet Craig Sawyer there? Because I saw that you guys were there, but now you're going to have Craig on. And I thought that was really cool that I saw that you're going to be having Craig on, because I just, I love Craig.
Yeah. He is, no, we got hooked up with Craig a couple months ago. Talked to him, you know, once or twice on the phone, got his story, got him scheduled for the show, and then Mar-a-Lago came up. And for some reason, we just, you know, our phones weren't working great where we were. So trying to get where everyone was sitting was hard. But we had just, that Craig show actually comes out this week.
Great.
And
that's awesome.
It is, oh my God.
He to go to what Christy said earlier about, you know, proof that angels live among us. He, to me, is one of those human beings that I'm like, God lives in you and you feel it. I mean, he just has that, and he does incredible work. And we'll also include that link, because Contraland is something everyone should also go see. Again, a topic that some people are uncomfortable with, but it's what's happening. And if you want to educate yourself, you absolutely need to go look at that. It's a an eye opener on so many different levels.
Right.
And it's a blessing to know that people like him and his group over at Veterans for Child Rescue do what they do, because they are saving lives and protecting our kids, which everybody should be doing, my opinion.
He's an amazing, amazing man. We were blessed to now know him, and we were talking about some of the operations and the things that they're involved in. And Tom and I were like, "Hello, can we go? Can we be involved in these operations? I'll put a vest and a gun on and kick a door in. I'm happy to do it at this point in my life for that subject." Right?
Yeah.
And you talk about angels, right? He would
Well,
be.
you guys are angels too, so we don't discount.
Oh, amen to that.
Don't tell my wife that. She won't.
Yeah,
She'll be like,
I don't know the last time I got compared to an angel, so we'll just leave it at
that. Most angels with broken wings are the best angels.
Okay. Satan was an angel too. Remember that. That's
No, but don't go there, Dan. You know where.
No, I won't.
You know where I am. I got to go pull my.
I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you.
I know.
So now maybe should we transition into some of the things that you guys have upcoming, because you've got a few cool things, and then also maybe a bit too about impact.
Okay. So we'll run by this quick so we can get to impact, because that's important. We got Police Week coming up in a little less than a month down in DC, which Dan and I started going to last year. And that is, if you can get there, if you have the means to get there, you should go. Any law enforcement supporter, anyone involved in that world should be there, especially the candlelight vigil. There is no sight around than seeing 100,000 people with candles singing like the national anthem, or being there and listening to names, the countless names that are read off during that ceremony of the men and women who were killed in line of duty this past year. And unfortunately, New York is always the longest when we're there, especially last year, because the names of everyone affected by 9/11 on a medical level was put on the wall and named. New York took about, what, Dan, a half hour to read the names last year. But it's a magical night and weekend, week that we're going to be at. And then the end of the month, Dan, we got a biggie at the end of May, right?
Yep, we're going to be down at CrimeCon again. We started that tradition last year, and it was such a success for us. The people that we met, absolutely blown away. And this year, being a year further into the podcast, we're going to be meeting up a bunch of friends now. People who we didn't know last year are now friends. And so just forget the list of who's going to be there. It's going to be long, but we're going to be on the stage at one point being interviewed, which is kind of fun. And we're going to have our booth, and it's going to be an amazing time in Nashville, meeting other podcast makers and other guests, and just interesting people. Again, this is the blessing of what we were able to do at this point in our life. And CrimeCon is an incredible opportunity to meet the people who are telling stories. You got to be there. I don't know if you guys are going to be there.
I know. I want to be there, like, so bad. I mean, that's so right up my alley. I mean,
it's a great weekend with such incredible people who, are doing what we're doing, and they're getting stories out there and telling stories and having guests. And, like Dan said, it's just coming off a successful year, and now going into CrimeCon, actually knowing what we're doing is going to make it even better. And, we just got great shows coming up, and being that you guys asked us, I'm going to tease everyone to death, and they're going to hate us for doing it. But next week, we're recording probably the show of the year for us by far. I'm not telling you what it is. Sorry. That's still a secret.
And that's not a slight on anybody we've had on or will have on. It's not.
No,
it's just
the
they
topic.
would all say the same.
It's just the topic. It's something we haven't done before, and it's kind of going to be a little different show because of what it is, but it is unbelievable what we were able to pull off, and we're pretty psyched about it.
Love it. So exciting. I mean, y'all, all their shows, seriously, and you've got to go back and watch the replays. They're just incredible. But I actually do know about this one, and it's not my story to share. So you can have
Now, why am I surprised about that? I don't, people. So I'm over here just doing my company.
It was a toss-up. We said we'll tell one, and I just happened to get on the phone with Kelly first. So.
You know something? I don't take it personally. I know
all right.
It was the pressure. I was like, I need to know, Tom. Throw me a bone.
I think there's a little.
That is what is great when you communicate with each other.
There's a little bit of a leak. I'm going to give a leak. All right.
Oh, okay.
Ever since OJ died, Tom and I are dedicating ourselves to finding the real killers of Ron and Nicole, because we know how much OJ was dedicated to that, and that work must continue because they're out there.
Yes, and I would love to be a part of that. I actually just said that on a conversation yesterday. Well, now we can go find who really did it. He spent so much time, samey, like doing it. Yeah, that whole thing is weird. We won't go down that rabbit hole. But this seems like a great time because, you know, when you're in a situation of domestic violence that some would say didn't exist, but it absolutely did. There's a great product that can protect people who maybe don't want to have a gun or think that's a little bit too much for them and a little heavy to carry on an occasion. So what can people do to protect themselves in law enforcement, universities, heck, anywhere?
Well, you know, Tom and I collectively in 50 years with the New York City Police Department never once used our pepper spray. Never once. And the reason we didn't use it, and most of the people we work with didn't use it, is because it's such a pain to deal with after the fact. Yeah. It impacts everybody around you. People get respiratory distress. They can't breathe. They've got to go to the hospital. It takes a long time to wash out of your eyes. It impacts 5 people around the person when you only want to hit one person. It's just not worth it. So cops aren't using it. And civilians might get it as a gift and have it in their bag, and they get afraid of it because, wow, if I use it in an elevator, it's going to mess me up too, so they don't do it. Yeah. So as a result, we have a missing tool that can be used. Now, if you carry a weapon to defend yourself, we're pro-Second Amendment people. It's fine. Get your training, carry if you want to, but understand the limitations of carrying a firearm. In the vast majority of encounters you may have with somebody who is intent on either stealing from you, harming you, or just harassing you, you have absolutely no ability to use deadly physical force. You'll go to prison. So you got a gun on you that you can only use in a very, very small sliver and probably never in your life. But what about those other incidents? What about your 18-year-old daughter who's going away to college, who's walking to her car at night from her job? What about anybody in their home and you hear a door break or a window break? What are you going to do? Grab for a gun? Better be certain that you're legally okay to do that. We came up with an alternative to pepper spray because it's not being used. It's not being used enough. Our stuff is not OC. It is not pepper spray. It is a different chemical combination that is much safer to use. No respiratory distress, no blowback on people around you. It's target specific. I spray you, Kelly, it hits you and only you. It does not cause the mucus drain, the snot parade, as I call it, which is what pepper spray causes. Person's got everything in their head comes out. It just makes a mess. And it doesn't take forever to clean up. It's very quick with water and you're back to normal in seconds to a minute or two, as opposed to a half an hour to 2 hours, and it doesn't reactivate later in the shower, which is what pepper spray does. The gifts that keeps on giving. Is this product allowed in Canada being asked, and where do you buy it? I'm going to tell you, you can get to it in a second. We'll get to all that kind of stuff, but it's a great question. Pepper spray has a UV marking dye as well. Now, if I'm a person and I spray somebody who's harassing me in a mall parking lot and they take off or their friend throws them in a car, well, that person can wash it off all they want, but law enforcement can take a black light, put it over their face an hour later, 6 hours later, and it's going to be that person identified. It's an identifying marker, which is important. So we have this available now at our website, which is carryimpact.com, carryimpact, IMPACT.com. And we think it fills a gap, and law enforcement is going gaga for it everywhere we go. We have plans to travel around the country and do product demonstrations for whole states. And Tom and I love it because we think it allows people to be empowered without having to worry about getting in trouble.
Yep. And you know, on the like Dan said, it's The personal protection part is big. The UV dye is a big, I think, game changer. Whenever we mention that to anyone, they love that part of it. And the other part that they love is our canisters are nitrogen propelled. So you have an MK3, which is our small bottle, can hit you 12 to 15 feet away. So now you don't have to wait for that bad guy to be on top of you to do something. If you see that threat coming and you have a distance of 10, 15 feet, 12 feet that you can now start protecting yourself, this is going to work. And it is an absolute powerful stream that will get you them right in their eyes. And I'm telling you, Dan and I both had it done to us. You cannot see.
So how big is this, Kelly? Do you have one so we can see how big it is?
I don't.
The MK3 is about that big. It's small. There's an MK4, which is a little bigger, and an MK9, which is sort of a small fire extinguisher.
I have a license and I have my gun. However, I also know that something happens, you're not going to just grab that gun, you know, pull it up and everything like that. To have something like that, it's just quicker. And
the great new feature that we're going to have, we actually just picked one. We're just in the last stages of getting it on the website and getting one, is a keychain.
Perfect.
We're going to have a canister on a keychain, which is a big, it's a big deal. We keep getting asked about it. We picked one. We have one. It's just a matter of finalizing a couple of logistical things that we have to do to get it on the website, but that's coming very soon.
Love it. I was talking to my mom about it just because to me, it's one of those things. I think the, senior community, this is a great alternative for so many reasons. And I did say, well, you can guarantee that all my family will have it in their stockings this year. And now I definitely love the keychain because I think it's important for people, regardless of where you are, have something just in case, because you never, ever know. And especially if it's keychain size, because you can carry it in your car, you can carry it in your bag, so it's not weighing it down. Because that is one thing with a firearm for sure, it's heavy, and it doesn't apply all the time. Because I think about it for for hiking, anything like that, where I may be by myself, and just a little something enough to get away. I don't necessarily want to hurt anybody, but I love it as an alternative, and I think it's brilliant with the blue light option. I mean, I'm with you. The first time I heard it, I was like, "That's genius." You think you washed your face off, but guess what?
No,
good luck.
No,
we're still identifying you. Yeah, and it's everything's made in the USA. We're proud of that. We
love it.
We're getting a question about product allowed in Canada. We have not sent anything to Canada yet. We're not sure, but I can tell you this much: there is no law prohibiting the chemicals that we have in our product. It is not a pepper spray. It is not a tear gas. There is no written statute that says you can't buy this, you can't sell this. So we're endeavoring to get it everywhere through law enforcement, through we have people helping us move it through colleges, getting young people in colleges to understand the need for a personal protective device. Don't be a victim to anybody. There's no reason to anymore. We have tech. We put a man on the moon in 1969. And then, let's not just think in terms of firearms. And again, we don't replace a firearm. Never said that. We are for those events where somebody is bugging you, somebody makes you feel threatened or uncomfortable, and you want them to be miserable so you can walk away. That's it. That's what it's all about. And you don't have to worry about getting arrested for an injury because it washes off with water and there's nothing left. The person's fine again. But until then, you get in your car, you leave.
Yeah, I love it. Love it. And we'll be sure to share. And I believe I saw Christy shared the link in here, but we'll also do it in the post promos. And I'll definitely do a little excerpt from here. I love this product. I mean, I love absolutely everything about it. And yeah, samples. And I do need to buy some because I need to have it in multiple places. I do believe that's one of those things. I do have some pepper spray in multiple places, but I will definitely replace it with this because I'm with you. I love the concept. I love the fact that it can't blow back on me and impact me. I agree. That was one of the things with pepper spray that always was a little bit concerning is like, what is that going to do to you? So that's awesome.
Well, with pepper spray, you have to give a quick hesitation to think, can I use this where I am? If I'm in an elevator and a guy's creeping me out, no. If I'm in a bus if I'm, I mean, we're talking to all kinds of people in all kinds of verticals about the potential use. Let's say, for example, you're on an aircraft and the guy next to you had 18 drinks waiting for his flight, and now he's the most belligerent a-hole in the world. Well, the flight crew comes over and they have traditional tools, which is, sir, knock it off. And if it gets really bad, they go for flex cuffs. Well, generally it ends up becoming fist fights and rolling around. Well, this stuff can neutralize somebody very quickly without any impact on other people around them. So yeah, we appreciate you letting us talk about it on the show. We think it's a game changer. My kids have them in their cars. My daughter has one in the bag too. Yep.
Oh,
I mean,
as someone with kids in at university, I think that's a fantastic example. Like every kid at university needs it. I mean, I don't know what's happening on those campuses, but my God. And I just like that it doesn't ultimately harm somebody. It just is enough time for you to get away from the person, which I think a lot of people struggle with. But in any event, I don't know where the hour went because it goes so fast.
Linda, sorry to interrupt. She says, so if we can prove it can be bought through other countries, I would love to put it on my website. Well, I'm sure you're talking to Kelly and she can let you connect with the guys and she can help you with that.
Yeah, and Linda, if you just want to reach out to us, contact, or is it carryimpact.com? There's a contact. Reach out to us. We'll be happy to engage with you in conversation. We'll share the safety data sheet information. You can see what's in it. We'll be dealing with the U.S. Commercial Service to get that stamp of no restriction, which we expect. So yeah, a lot of stuff happening. Happy to talk to you, Linda. Thank you for your interest.
Yeah, she's great. She does work with trafficking. So she's incredible. So this will be a great, I'll do an intro for you guys.
Cool.
A great combo for sure. But as we do come up on the hour, I do want to, start to wrap, which I hate to, because I feel like I have so many questions I want to ask. But, that just means there will be another time. So before we wrap, final thoughts as we come to a close here, guys.
Wow. First of all, thank you for having us on a second time, which is a great honor on your birthday show for 1 year, which is a great accomplishment. So thank you so very much. And you know what? Our big thing, I'm going to put out there what we do at the end of our show, which is so important to us, to support law enforcement and the military. Keep them in your prayers and keep them in your thoughts, because although Dan and I did it for 50 years combined, it's still inspiring to see all these young, men and women out there doing a job they're volunteering to do. No one's forcing them to do it. It's all volunteer. They don't do it for medals. They don't do it for money, for sure. They do it to help people and be out there and support their communities and try to straighten their town out, their city out, their state out, whatever it might be. And, like I said, you see them in a store, pat them on the back, say thank you. If they're behind you online waiting to buy something, buy them their lunch. You have no idea what that does for someone who, that cop might be having a really bad day. He might have just left a horrible crime scene or had to deal with a kid who was, abused or whatever the case is. And now he just wants to get a quick meal. Have that in your mind when you're standing online and they're behind you, and buy them that meal. It would mean the world to them. And that's about it. And thank you again to both you incredible ladies for having us on again.
Oh, our pleasure. Dan?
So if I could wrap up, what I would say on top of what Tom said is we live in a crazy world. This is an election year. Be careful who you vote for. Vote for the people that stand for what you stand for. Stand for the lives of unborn babies. Stand for the rights of property owners. Stand for the first 10 amendments of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, which are endowed by our Creator, God, not by government. Understand you have the freedom of speech. Understand that you have basic freedoms that are in you because you're a born human being in the likeness of God, as opposed to a subject of the government. And there's a book out there that's the most widely sold book in the world. It's called the Bible. It's 66 books. Read it. Get it, read it. It's God's book. It's his user manual for human beings. Learn what he says about life. Learn what he says about himself, about heaven and earth, about heaven and hell. And hell exists, and there is evil in this world. Don't be afraid to call it out when you see it. and don't be afraid to take a stand against it. We certainly aren't, and we hope you won't be either. And there is power in prayer. There's much power in prayer. Never forget that as well. Thank you.
Whew, how do you follow up on that? I mean, seriously, amen to that. Christy, any final thoughts, my dear?
I'm jumping on with Dan again. Our
Get on the winning
safety,
team, Christy. The winning team. We know how this ends, right?
the safety, prosperity. You all know that I work with job seekers. You all are losing your jobs because of the people coming over. I will give you a quick little story from one of my clients who lives in LA. She unfortunately had to go on food stamps. This is somebody who used to make really good money. And it's very embarrassing because I deal with people who are losing their homes, they're filing bankruptcy, food stamps, and even thinking about committing suicide because the economy, it is what it is. So when she called to apply for food stamps, they asked, did you just come over the border because you won't have to go through the interview?
Oh my
So
gosh,
people, I don't care if you hate Trump. One, you don't know him, but I'm, this isn't turning a political thing, but look at your life now. Look at what's going on in the world. Look at all that money that went over to Iran that's not going into your pocketbook. And bottom line is, I didn't have children for a reason, and now I'm paying for their school loans. So yes, Dan and Tom, you know I stand with you. You know I'm with the veterans, my first responders in our country, and we've got to get it back. However, Dan, you know this as well. This was already written. It's time for people to wake up and bring God back into their life.
Amen.
That's right.
Amen. Right. And that's honestly the takeaway. Yeah, that's the brilliant takeaway from all of it. It's not politics. It is about our faith in God. The story is written, and this battle has already been won. So I love that it came around to that. Again, cannot thank you guys enough. We just absolutely adore you. Love what you're doing. Keep doing great things. And y'all need to definitely catch their show. We will share all the links to Impact, their podcast, to anything that was mentioned. Actually, one final thing at the end. Is there a way that we can watch virtually anything at CrimeCon other than you guys doing lives?
We'll find out. If there's a live thing at CrimeCon. I know there's a podcast row that people are going to be doing their shows from there, but I don't know if there's actually a live kind of feed. We can find that out. We talk to Cheryl and ask her.
Okay, groovy. All right. Well, that all being said, again, thank you everyone for joining us today. I know we were having some technical difficulties. I was getting some messages that people weren't able to comment. So we will follow up with you. And if you have any questions or comments, do feel free to connect with Tom and Dan on social media. Do connect with Impact. You've got to check it out. And again, we'll share all the links. Thank you for joining us today. And be sure to join us next week at 1:11 p.m. Eastern time. And just remember, and this is just proof of it, we are all on this journey, and together we do make it awesome. Have a great day, everyone.